think we're recording. So, Barry, it's so fantastic to see you in your wonderful home in France. Thanks so much for talking to me. I'm in my kitchen here in Brighton.
Hello, Joanna. It's really great to talk to you this morning, and thank you so much for including me in this series of chats to the Friends of the Orchestra. It's wonderful to be able to talk to everybody. I hadn't expected it. Brilliant.
Well, they'll be really happy to see your lovely face. And why don't you tell people a bit about where you are at the moment, where you've been?
Oh, I see. Well, it's a little bolt hole, you know, that I've had for years, actually. Most of the time when I've been with the orchestra, I've had this little escape place. If you drew a line directly coming inland from Bordeaux and directly going up north from Toulouse, you'd hit a beautiful old town which is on a sort of oxbow lake in the River Lot, and the town is called Cahors, and we're just about 20 miles southwest of that, right out in farmerland. I mean, I don't have any neighbours except cows and sunflowers, so there's nobody I can disturb when I'm practicing, you see.
Now, that was what I was going to ask you about, because it's the idea you're out in this fantastic countryside to study scores or play the piano, or what do you do when you're there?
Well, it's funny, when I get here, I have a few days when I don't listen to music, I'll do anything at all, complete sort of, and then bit by bit, I think, oh, I need to look at that. Oh, I want to have a look at that piece. And slowly it all starts again. And yeah, I just think, you know, it's wonderful to be able to do music in a peaceful, quiet surroundings, actually. And yeah, it's fantastic.
You've spent a lot of time in Australia, haven't you? Every year you have a ballet orchestra over there, and you do a lot.
Yeah, well, it's been a long time association. I first went to Australia on tour with the Royal Ballet. We did a most wonderful tour. It started in New Zealand in about October, and I think we took about 3 months to work ourselves back, coming through New Zealand, Australia, then we did Hong Kong, all sorts of places. I mean, it was the most wonderful tour. We didn't take our orchestra. We had an orchestra in each town that we went to. So Colin Metters, who was the other conductor with me in the company, we leapfrogged. We went 1 week ahead, rehearsed up the orchestra, then the company would catch us up, and he would rehearse, he would perform, and then I'd go on to the next town. So, gosh, I saw so much of the world touring with the Royal Ballet. But of course, the Australian Ballet did and still does have a wonderful link with the Royal Ballet. And so after a wee while, they asked me if I'd go out there and guest conduct. And it's been a relationship that's kept going ever since. It's really super.
It's a very nice place to go. I've played lots of times in Australia. It's great to be there. I mean, obviously none of us get in and out at the moment of Australia, but
no,
lovely environment.
I was supposed to be back there in June doing something in Melbourne, but of course that's all closed down at the moment. But you probably played a series of concerts with Musica Viva, have you?
Actually, I haven't played with Musica Viva. I know the guy who runs it is that very good composer, isn't it, who programs all Musica Viva. I've had him in to teach at the Academy because he writes such tremendous piano music, but I've worked with all the orchestras in Australia. I played at Sydney Opera House many times, and you know, Melbourne, all the big festivals, obviously, that they run. It's a fantastic place. And
the enthusiasm for classical music is extraordinary. Not something necessarily you'd expect, but I've stayed many times in Newcastle, which is a city just up the coast from Sydney. Yeah. And the concerts they have there are astonishingly wonderful. Yeah, brilliant.
So you and I have worked together. I was thinking about this morning before I was setting all this up. Do you remember we did a Beethoven 4 together at Chichester Theatre?
Yes.
And I think it was the RPO. I think it was the RPO you were conducting. And it was one of those dates where you turn up and do it. And it was such a pleasure to work with you. You're such a wonderful collaborator.
Oh, you're very kind to say that. I have to say to you, in all honesty, that accompanying concerti is for me a great pleasure. I suppose it's not that different from accompanying dancers. The challenge of getting inside somebody else's thoughts about a piece and trying to support them and go with it. I love it. And when I was learning my trade, as it were, with Vernon Hanley and Sir Adrian and so on, they made a great thing about making sure that you give concertos as much time as you give your symphonies.
Well, that's quite unusual amongst conductors, because I've worked with loads of conductors who don't do that, and they don't even know the concerto. You know, you can tell they're just busking along a bit until
Gosh,
they get to the symphony.
That must be so aggravating for you as a soloist. I can't imagine, actually, that.
It is aggravating, and it actually is aggravating for the orchestra as well, because they're aware of this. The conductor's just turned off. You know, they think they're going to have a break for half an hour or something. And of course, the orchestral writing, often in a concerto, is just as complicated and subtle as what they're going to do in the second half. And so, you know, no, I kind of sit there watching the orchestra feeling rather annoyed as well. But and especially something like Beethoven Fourth Piano Concerto, it's so intricate between soloist, conductor, orchestra. You know, it's so intimate and sort of communicative, you know, way it flows and ebbs. It's a fantastic piece. So I always remember that performance with you. You were outstandingly collaborative. It was great.
Well, that's just so wonderful to know. You cheered me up. Wonderful.
Well, listen, we must talk about the orchestra, because of course you are conductor laureate, and
well,
you know, you've been associated with them for so long. Is it over 30 years you've been?
I think it was 89, wasn't it, when I started, and it would have been Ronnie Power, who was the chairman of the board at that time. He came to something that I did in Eastbourne with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. And after that, I had a message from him to say, would you like to come down and guest with the Brighton Phil? And in those days, because I was doing a lot of work at Covent Garden already by then, but there isn't anything quite as wonderful as getting out on a stage and doing the repertoire that Brighton did for all those years. No, I love it, and I think it's very special, and I'm thrilled that you're there now to take it forward, new ideas, and breathe new life into it all.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a thrilling thing for me to be asked to do. I mean, really, it's fantastic to have the chance to work closely with an orchestra and to try and build on all the great things that you've done and do some new things as well. And of course, we had this great season ready to go, you know, really lovely season, which of course you were going to be a huge part of as well. And by pure fate, you know, the plug was pulled on it, but we can do all that in a year's time. And meanwhile,
yes, indeed.
I'm going to focus on the players, you know, do some chamber music.
Yeah, well, it's such a challenging time for all of us in the arts. But I think as often, well, it sometimes happens with these situations, one emerges the stronger for it, because it gives you time to think, to decide what's really important. And let's hope that all our artistic theatres and concert halls and so on will survive and will emerge even stronger as a result of the difficulties we've been through.
Yes, well, none of us know quite what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a while, and I think in the meantime we've all got to be very creative and resourceful about what we can do, because we know the arts are full of very talented, highly talented people who are not in it for the money, obviously, and they're in it for their love of music and their love of communication. And we do have to work in a different landscape for a little while. I think that's the big issue. And
yes, yeah, very well put. I agree with you totally. And I think, you know, in some ways, it's even harder for people. I've some friends who are right at the beginning of their conducting careers. And that's tough, you know, just when you were expecting to get out there and start making your way and getting some engagements, and everything is frozen.
Well, one of the things I've thought about a lot, because I've always been very interested in young performers, those people right at the beginning of their careers who really need quite a lot of experience and help to get going, and they just need to work. When I was very young, I was taken on by YCAT. I was one of the first artists ever to be taken on by YCAT in this country. It was a fantastic apprenticeship for me because I literally played concerts. There was one week, I remember I played 6 recitals in different places. You know, and one was a major concert hall and one was a tiny little music club with 30 people, and then one was a school. It didn't really matter where it was. It was an incredible apprenticeship where you learned how to do what you needed to do. It's like taking your driving test, but you only learn to drive when you're actually in the car on your own and you're doing it.
So true, yeah.
And I'm always very mindful about giving young people a chance. When I've run festivals in the past, I've done a lot for these young professionals. Well, I was thinking now, this thing that we're all going to emerge from, it would be good to try and bring young conductors, young soloists, young singers, you know, even more forward than we would normally do, because they've missed out on such a lot.
Yes, well, I think in many ways, talking, you know, the piano is a wonderful instrument to get recitals going again, because at least you only need one player, and because the piano is so large, you're bound to be a fair distance away from whoever you're playing with, or you're playing solo. Yeah. And so I think this is the age of the piano recital. The Wigmore Hall are doing a lot of things, aren't they?
They are. I think it's tough for. I did a live streamed recital a couple of weeks ago from an empty concert hall, and I really enjoyed it. But it's a very different experience. Obviously, you play in a completely empty hall, so that's very echoey. Yes. And then you've got to be prepared to talk to camera in between the pieces, and that just doesn't suit everybody. I know, I understand, but I quite enjoyed it, and I think.
Oh well done you. I think that's a huge challenge. Actually, I haven't done that yet. I'm about to have a concert which will be to an empty hall, and I'm quite interested to see how that works. But I think that one of the things that we're all going to miss is that social element of music making. You know, you can tell, can't you, when the Brighton audience come to the Dome on a Sunday afternoon, of course they come to hear the music, but they also come to see their friends, to chat in the interval, to be part of that live experience. And people are going to need that even more when this thing gets under control.
Yes, I quite agree. It is a social thing, and having a cup of tea beforehand and seeing your favourite friends and sitting next to people and experiencing the music and all that, and that's definitely got to return in some way. I mean, we're going to obviously all have to live online a little bit and do a bit of both to begin with. And you know, nobody likes doing stuff online, but all of us have been teaching or talking or interviewing or doing whatever it takes to reach people.
Yeah,
we've all suddenly become rather good at it, Zoom and everything. I mean,
yeah, I did something the other day.
Who would have known?
With a singer friend of mine in New York. She said, "Oh, you've got a lovely harpsichord, and I want to sing some Dowland. Will you do the accompaniment for me? Record the accompaniment for me." So we set up this thing. We did a transatlantic recording session together. It was great fun. Yeah. Wouldn't want to do it all day, but
no, but you just do whatever. What are you going to do in your empty concert hall? What are you going to conduct?
Well, you know that you'll know this, that it was a great idea. We started off by thinking of doing the Doreen Carwithen piano concerto, which is a fantastic piece that I haven't done before. And of course, with the distancing that the orchestra need, it works rather well because I can have quite a large string orchestra. And whereas if I had winds and brass and so on, I would have to cut down on the strings. So the discussion now is to see what we do with that. What's the best piece to go alongside it? But what a fascinating composer.
Yeah, absolutely, and what a great idea! What a wonderful idea to do that piece. Was that your idea, or did somebody else sort of suggest it to you, or did you know the work already?
No, I didn't know the piece at all, and we were supposed to be doing a concert up in the Malcolm Arnold Festival, and when we couldn't do that, we racked our brains, and our soloist came up with this suggestion. So
very nice, and I'm all in favour. And you've done a lot of English music with the BPO, haven't you? I mean, you're sort of known for championing English composers.
Yes. I think the thing is that the honest answer is that being a British conductor, it tends to come your way. And I've always loved British music, but I'm a bit of a butterfly and I like to change spots. So I've never been really a specialist conductor. the more variety, the better, as far as I'm concerned, Joanna.
You're like me. Yes, I think that's a sort of PR and marketing problem. I mean, all musicians and artists tend to get pigeonholed by journalists, basically. But of course, we know that artists themselves necessarily are very curious creatures, and they move quite quickly, and they are yeah, I mean, they could see connections, don't they, quite quickly between composers and time frames, you know, because I've always enjoyed putting early music with contemporary music and that kind of thing, and seeing the connection between John Dowland and blues and all this, you know. I love all that, thinking about how do musicians relate to one another all the time.
Yes, yes, it fascinates me too, absolutely. I was having a conversation with a very good friend of mine the other day and saying that I was about to listen to some Debussy played by a German pianist. And he said, Debussy played by a German pianist? You wouldn't do that, would you? I said, yes, of course I would, why not? We've got these strange ideas sometimes that what works and what doesn't work. You know?
Well, completely. I mean, usually people don't play their own music that well. You know, there's a great example of Leonard Slatkin, who was marvelous at conducting British music, you know, had a great love of Elgar and everything, you know. I mean, it's very often that I've loved playing American piano music, like Charles Ives and Barber and, you know, a lot of American jazz composers, you know, Lenny Bernstein and all that. So I don't think you have to come from the same country at all.
No, I just love the idea of coming from different perspectives at things. You know, it's, yeah. It enriches the whole thing.
What are your, getting back to your great, you know, history with the orchestra and your continuing history, do you have any particular highlights you can remember, or something that particularly stands out with the orchestra?
Oh God, you know, over the years there have been so many things. I think inevitably the really big works that we debated long and hard whether we could do a Rite of Spring, and in fact, eventually we were able to do it. I think it nearly broke the bank, but I mean, it was a great thing to do in Brighton.
How many rehearsals did you have to do that piece? Because it's still difficult.
Yes, I think we did it on the day.
No, you didn't.
I think so. I think we did.
No.
Oh no, I beg your pardon. There was one pre-rehearsal in Henry Wood Hall. One. But of course, you know, the whole orchestra knew the piece, from having played it in other places and so on. So it was just a question of pulling the strings together. The other piece I loved doing was we did a Janacek Sinfonietta with the brass up in the balcony. And that was tremendously exciting. The London Brass Ensemble joined us for that. It was, yeah, but there have been so many great moments. It's a wonderful orchestra, and the way that our friends of the orchestra support us, you know, I think it's terrible. It's one of those things that saddens me about current music making, is that so many towns like Brighton, who had an orchestra not dissimilar from ours, that they've gone by the wayside. We have to do everything we can to keep it going, because every city should have its own orchestra.
Yes.
It's like having a football team. You take a pride and an interest in what belongs to you, what you have on your doorstep. And alongside the visits from all the great orchestras of the world that can come to the Dome, Brighton needs to have its Philharmonic.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's an absolute miracle and brilliant that it's kept going for as long as it has. And, you know, with the great help of these very loyal audiences that have been over the years. I was in the office the other week, actually, and in a socially distanced way, because we're beginning to sort through all the posters and photographs of the orchestra. And I said to Kat, the administrator, I said, shall we just start at the beginning? Because there's just so much stuff. By the way, Barry, there are about 10,000 pictures of you in the office.
Oh no! Well, I think I can suggest
Barry Wordsworth Art Gallery in there.
I think I can suggest what the best thing to do with those, and it might be a question of a match or something. Anyway,
we started at the beginning, and I was really moved, because I said, "Oh, let's just do from 1925, which I think is the earliest piece they've got of a poster or a program, up to the end of the 40s, and it's absolutely phenomenal. Of course, every major huge name came and played with the orchestra down in the Dome, and
yes,
absolutely astounding, these names, you know, all on the same bill, you know, Myra,
yes,
Yehudi Menuhin and Arthur Schnabel, and it's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely extraordinary. Beecham used to come down, didn't he? I think.
Yes, but he seems to be more in the next decade, you know.
Yes,
Absolutely, but
because I love the wonderful remark he made. Somebody said, "Oh, well, what's the acoustics like in Brighton in the Dome?" "There are no acoustics," he said. But of course, we're so lucky now. They've improved that hugely
yes,
since the refurbishment of the Dome. It's
yes,
not a
and
bad acoustic now.
it's not bad. And when they eventually kind of managed to totally reopen, they've done a lot of work on the smaller spaces as well. And I think what would be fantastic is, alongside all the big symphonic concerts of the orchestra, that we can actually take some of those principal players and do smaller things in the other smaller spaces, so that we have even more of the players, you know.
Oh, that's wonderful, Joanna. I think that's absolutely right, because you know the hall, is it called the Corn Hall, the Corn Exchange, alongside. That's very good for chamber music.
It's a wonderful acoustic in there, really
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah.
and for small string orchestra staff and things, that works really well.
Yeah, well, I think it's just a chance to do more events, because otherwise we're just sort of, you know, doing 7 or 8 massive concerts. That's fantastic, but you know, it doesn't seem, for an orchestra that lives and breathes and grows in the Brighton area, it'd be lovely to do even more stuff. And
This is the right way forward. I'm convinced you're right. Absolutely right.
good, I'm glad I'm doing the right thing.
So, Joanna, it's been wonderful to be able to chat. Who, are you talking to some other people from the orchestra this series?
I certainly am, because I mean, obviously we want to try and get some chamber music going after Christmas. I'm talking to Peter, the principal cellist, about
Great.
chamber music together, hopefully in the church near me in Kemp Town, but wherever we'll go. And the other thing I really, really want to do, which I'm talking to Lindsay Schilling about, is a Christmas carol. Dickens's A Christmas Carol with a brass ensemble.
Oh, that'll be wonderful.
It's such a Christmassy thing to do. We were going to do that anyways as a live concert, which we hope still to be able to do, but we're going to do it online otherwise.
Right.
So we're talking about that with a narrator and lovely, beautiful, you know, arranged music. I love brass ensemble, by the way. I absolutely adore that as a genre. So
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed for all of that, because even if I'm still down here, if it's online, I can hear it. So,
yeah. Absolutely. You'll be an audience too. Thank you so much, Barry. You've been just marvellous to talk to.
You too.
So lovely. Take care. Have a wonderful lunch, and we'll see you very soon.
Thanks, Joanna. All the very best.
Bye. See you.
Bye.